Alright, so posterior lobe, pretty simple. Now let's talk about the anterior lobe, which is a lot more complex. Now, the anterior lobe, so basically hypothalamic-pituitary control. So that, again, the hypothalamus and pituitary in terms of the endocrine system, they are partners, they are co-workers, but hypothalamus is the boss. So hypothalamus is going to secrete releasing hormones. Now, there's not just one single releasing hormone, it's a category of hormones. But these releasing hormones target the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is going to release a second wave of hormones that are different from that first wave. And sometimes they are called tropic hormones, sometimes they're called stimulating hormones. And then once it reaches this target organ releases yet another wave of hormones. So hypothalamic pituitary control involves multiple steps and multiple sets of hormones. So it's like first wave of hormones we have here, then second wave, and then the third wave. So this is a common pattern you see in typical signaling or endocrine signaling in the hypothalamic pituitary axes. Now, what we have here, a different blood supply, still carrying all this blood to the pituitary, but now it's going to the anterior. So here we have all these neurons in the hypothalamus, but now they're secreting these hormones into the bloodstream. But these are what we call collectively releasing hormones. Again, they're a category of hormones. So these releasing hormones, they only have a very short commute. They end up going to the anterior pituitary and then binding to receptors on endocrine cells. Now, endocrine cells, there are many different types. Why are there many different types? Because there are many different types of hormones they can produce. But they specialize in certain types of hormones. So then they release yet another wave of hormones different from the ones secreted up here. And these tropic, stimulating, or other hormones, they're going to be carried to the rest of the body and then potentially end up at their target organ. So here we have that second wave of hormones being carried throughout the bloodstream, reaching some target endocrine organ. Which organ? It depends on the identity of these hormones right here. And once it reaches here, this target organ, if there is a target organ, it might secrete another wave of hormones. So we had 1, 2, 3 waves of hormones. And now this final wave of hormone is being released to the rest of the body. Yeah, so it's a lot of things happening here. So there are 4, or actually like 5 or like 4 with an asterisk, 5 if you're using a book. So we have a thyrotropin releasing hormone, that's what the RH stands for, corticotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, growth hormone releasing hormone, and prolactin releasing hormone. Many different names, and why do I put that asterisk and why do I italicize it? It's a relatively new, I mean, it's been known for decades, but they're saying like, okay, is this the hormone that controls prolactin? I'll get to that real soon. But yeah, these first 4 I definitely want you to know. This 5th one is still being actively researched. So I think it's not quite canon yet. So what makes releasing hormones different? They serve a very specific function. Their main function is to control and regulate other hormones, more specifically, the hormones that are secreted by the pituitary gland, not the rest of the body. So they only have a very short stop going from they're secreted by the hypothalamus, but they end up going to the pituitary, and that's their main function, just to signal to the pituitary. Now, what we have here are those releasing hormones, and then they reach these endocrine cells in the anterior pituitary, and then we have our second wave of hormones. So what we have here, so all these releasing hormones, so thyrotropin releasing hormones, if it binds to a pituitary gland endocrine cell that has the receptor for this TRH, it's going to release TSH in response. Now, say you have corticotropin releasing hormone and you have a pituitary gland endocrine cell that responds to CRH. It's going to secrete adrenocorticotropic hormone, or more simply, ACTH. And then gonadotropin releasing hormone is going to go to the pituitary, and then it's going to secrete, the cells are going to secrete either FSH or LH. And then we have growth hormone releasing hormone, and that tells the pituitary to secrete growth hormone. Now, I know this is a lot of information, But again, what is the commonality here? Notice that all these releasing hormones are going straight to the pituitary gland, and they're triggering the release of yet another wave of hormone. Which hormone? It depends on what type of releasing hormones being secreted. Now, prolactin, this is a big asterisk. So yeah, so the thing with prolactin, you still have the hypothalamus, and prolactin is secreted by the anterior pituitary. That's canon, that's well established. I expect you to know this at least. Now, what happens between the hypothalamus and pituitary, that is it's where it gets interesting. So your books say it's prolactin releasing hormone, and again, thing is that yes, we do know there's a gene for it, and but whether it's the most important factor, a lot of scientists and endocrinologists aren't completely convinced this is the thing that controls prolactin. And actually, back in 1971, yeah, you probably not. So what they noticed is that thyrotropin releasing hormone was actually triggering the release of prolactin. So older textbooks might have thyrotropin releasing hormone. Now, which is the hormone that controls prolactin? It's difficult to say. Like this is pretty well established, these things right here. But okay, what I'm getting at here, if there's a debate like this, I don't expect you to know this stuff, but this is more to keep you informed that it's complicated. And this is why endocrinology, I think maybe 10 years from now, the part of your textbook that probably will change the most is the parts that talk about the nervous system. And if the endocrine section will probably be the second one, the one that changes the second most of all the chapters. Because again, they're always discovering new hormones or pathways that these hormones are regulating. Okay, so we have all these, so we're talking about the second wave of hormones. These are being secreted by the pituitary itself in response to releasing hormones. So we have ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. So I have a mnemonic. So the anterior pituitary hormones, so this is the mnemonic I like. So active teens prefer getting free lunches. So this tells you the first letter. So again, these are all the anterior pituitary hormones in humans. Now, thing about this, I like this mnemonic because why? It keeps F and L together. So follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, they actually work very closely together. So I don't like to separate them because they work together in the reproductive systems of both female and male reproductive systems. So FSH and LH. So I'm going to give you a very broad, we will cover some of these hormones more in detail, especially FSH and LH when we get to the end of the semester, when we talk about the reproductive system. So they're both secreted by the anterior pituitary. They're both triggered by the pituitary secretes it in response to GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. So you might notice that why isn't there just GRH? Well, we have gonadotropin and releasing hormone, and we have growth hormone releasing hormones. Yeah, so then this is very interesting. So then let's target both the female and male gonads. Ooh, endorphins. Yeah, so that one is very interesting. You might want to ask a question. So if you wanted to ask something about, I don't think we really have time to do that in the nervous system, but you might want to look up neuropeptides. It's a very broad topic, but yeah, lots of things you can research there. So, oh yeah, and so I think someone asked multiple questions during Top Hat. Like, remember, only one question counts toward your points each week. But what if you have all these great questions? Well, my advice is to save those questions in the future. If you want to ask 3 questions in a week, well, maybe hold on to those 2. Ask 1 question, hold on to the 2 questions, and you have your second and third week already checked off. So again, the Top Hat, this is more about response. We don't want a lot of questions that go unanswered this semester. So that's why it's more response. Yeah, we favor more responses this semester in Top Hat. And what we have here with back to FSH and LH. So FSH and LH, what we have here is that, we have the female menstrual cycle. So FSH is actually very important in terms of developing what we call the follicle, and we'll get to this in the end of the semester. And LH is very important in ovulation. But yeah, all of these hormones are involved in the menstrual cycle. So again, if you don't get endocrinology, you're going to have a hard time with the menstrual cycle later on. Yep. So then FSH. So FSH and LH. Now we have it in the menstrual cycle. Does that mean that it's only important in females? It's important in males as well. So FSH is very important in targeting these special cells we call Sertoli cells, and these help in sperm production. Now, LH, these target a different type of cells we call Leydig cells. These cells, sometimes called interstitial cells, they're important in producing testosterone in men. So FSH and LH aren't exclusive to females. They're important to males as well. So if you have a disorder in FSH and LH in females, you're going to have problems with the menstrual cycle and ovarian development and ovulation. In males, you're going to have problem with sperm production and testosterone. So if you have imbalances in FSH and LH, that can cause reproductive problems in both females and males. Now, thyroid stimulating hormone. So we will have a future lecture about thyroid hormone, but at this point, stimulates thyroid hormone production. So we did talk about thyroid hormone very basic, but we will get to it in more detail. There is a whole lecture in it. So thyroid hormone, very powerful because why? You have a receptor for thyroid hormone pretty much in every cell in your body. And it's very important for metabolism. But more to come in future lectures.